Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? This is David Castillo from St. Vitus. Welcome to another episode of Age of Quarantine. We got Lingua Ignota, aka Kristen Hader, coming to join us today for an interview. Just want to say thanks to everybody who's been donating to our Kickstarter. We got 1 week left, and the support has been incredible. So thank you guys. And Kristen's here right now, so let's hook her up. We had a little issue. Let's see if Kristen can rejoin us. I got the invitation, and we went to hook up, and then all of a sudden it went. So, while we're waiting to get this sorted out, if you guys have questions, you can use the little question box below, and I will try and get to some of those towards the end of the interview. We'll see what we're doing, and we'll kind of figure it out from there, but we kind of do those a bit at the end. And again, thanks to everybody who's been watching these and donating and just keeping things going. We're gonna see where Kristen is at right now. Let's see here. Sorry guys, a little bit of a technical issue. Oh, there she is. Let's see if we got it now. The power of technology. There she is.
Hi.
Hello, how are you, Kristen? Nice to see you. How are you today?
It's good to see you too, Dave. I'm alive and in the world that we live in, where it's a terrible place to be right now.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a past 48 hours, huh?
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we'd be remiss to. I always start the interviews kind of talking about where we'd be, but we've had a really kind of epic turn of events with George Floyd in Minnesota, and watching most of that burn down, a city that probably me and you have passed through, going on tours numerous times and stuff like that. So and just seeing that and all the strife in this country while we're going through a pandemic on top of it all is a pretty wild shitstorm, and an appropriate one as well.
Yeah, it is. It's I think it's about time that things be completely dismantled, and we're seeing that the way that we've been doing things doesn't work, and that the system as it exists currently cannot be upholded. So I think that it's really like terrifying to watch it go down, but it seems like it's necessary. Like we're living through a revolution, which is it's insane. And everything is collapsing in strange ways, but
yeah, and I think it's the tension's been there for a while, right? And so you can imagine that things would continue to just always go status quo forever, and this is sort of a moment of things obviously just kind of having an eruption, and all of these things sort of coming out of that are this whole situation is going to change us in many different ways, and through the pandemic and quarantine and social unrest and all these things. So we're all here for it, and we'll either all be participating or watching or doing everything to sort of guide our way into the new world, which is really interesting because that's what artists do, right? That's, we kind of take in all of these things, personal experiences and macro experiences, and kind of put that into our art, right?
Yeah, indeed.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, you make music that has been called survivor anthems, right? Is that a term that you coined yourself?
I did not it was kind of like a leading question where I was asked, there's something anthemic, or it was posed that there was something anthemic to the quality of my lyrics, and a lot of the lyrics are sourced from like biblical language or the language of like, a lot of it is like power violence or hardcore music, which is anthemic. And so, yeah, I think that I was like, I guess you could say that there's an anthemic quality to it. And then she said that it was like, oh, it's like survivor anthems. So that's kind of how it came to be. I don't know if I would call them that myself. Seems a little self-aggrandizing, but yeah, that's how that came to be.
Got it. It's interesting because, just getting into obviously you and your music and your background and stuff. When I hear Lingua Ignota, personally, I feel like there's it's rageful music. It feels like an eruption. It feels like a rageful music, but there's a particularly feminine quality to that rage that I think is really interesting and cool and kind of unique. It doesn't really feel like a lot of other heavy musics and stuff like that. Well, and some of it I think comes from a little bit of the melding of the softer and the classical, and how you kind of create this drama within your songs. These really kind of cacophonous crescendos and really quiet and stuff like that. You talk a little bit about just kind of your musical training and kind of going back to the earliest days and how you kind of started building your palette with these different sounds, because they kind of collide in this really interesting way.
When I was very young, it was discovered that I had a proclivity for singing and that I was okay at it. And I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school for grade school, and started singing in church. And when that started happening, I started then to take classical vocal lessons and studied as a soprano for a long time, and intended to go to music school, to conservatory, to do operatic training as a vocalist. And when I got to a certain age, I started experiencing my own kind of mental health issues around depression and anxiety, and then an eating disorder. And I wasn't captivated by the kinds of music that I was supposed to be singing, or by like the repertoire that I was supposed to be singing at that age and with my voice type. And I was really drawn to the classical music that was like medieval, or that had strange modes, or that was much kind of darker. And then I also got into like alternative music, and that spoke to me as kind of like a young, angsty adolescent. And so,
can you tell me what were a couple of those early alternative bands that kind of, started turning you on to that kind of side of music, like some early stuff that you're just like, oh, I started falling in love with this, that, and the other thing?
Yeah. One of those is 9 Inch Nails, which is, it's a good, like, trance music is such a good vehicle for like both industrial music and classical music as well. So that was a good kind of like entry point for me into industrial music and noisier stuff. And then I got really into like power violence and hardcore and like grindcore and like stuff that was local to the San Diego scene at the time when I was growing up, like, the Locust and like Cattle Decap and that kind of thing. So that music spoke to me, and like I listened to a lot of like Cave In and Botch and like the Hydra Head stuff, kind of early teens. So
brilliant. Love it. And we had Justin on the show not too long ago as well, and it feels like San Diego in those times is really breeding a lot of really a whole array of like insane sounds as well.
Yeah.
So a lot for you to pick from, even at this age. So as you were kind of going through that, you were sort of discovering this. When did you sort of start composing music that kind of started pulling from both elements? Because to me, Lingua Ignota sort of feels like the tension between these sort of two worlds really explored, and that it kind of gives way to this new just kind of overall feeling of expression that I was kind of alluding to before, that really feels singular.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. I think that I also kind of when I went to school, I became involved in like sound art and conceptual sound arts and like tape music and like musique concrète and like all these kind of academic schools of making experimental music.
Christian Marplay and John Cage and
exactly
that nature, which is that's some of the wildest music out. If you're into extreme music, and for all the people watching right now, that's definitely I see that in you for sure, in some of the things that you put together for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of the stuff, and especially I think part of my approach is to replicate the feeling of abuse. And so there are those kind of like dramatic shifts from harsh to soft, from loud to quiet, that kind of take you off guard. And I think a way that I do that is kind of with this like pastiche approach of like putting a bunch of different genres together in different ways, in a way that to me makes sense. Maybe it won't make sense to other people, but it's a way to create this different language that is about expressing trauma, which is something that we tend to think of as inexpressible or a completely unique individual experience that can't be put into words, really.
Yeah, I mean, I find that to be like, just really like an interesting thing. And you have an MFA, am I right about this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. So I feel like there's also Lingua Ignota as kind of a music project, but there's, I think, these really strong and real like philosophical like underpinnings of it. And then I started reading some shit because I like to, I don't know, prepare myself for these things every once in a while. And I was like, oh, wow, you've done like thesis and things of that nature when you were in school that really kind of felt like they would be the precursor, especially to some of the more the performance stuff. Could you talk a little bit about some of that work? And I was particularly kind of wondering about the 100,000 or 10,000 pages.
10,000 pages. Yeah.
10,000 pages is a lot. So, I want to know about 10,000 pages.
Yeah, absolutely. So for my MFA at Brown in Digital Language Arts, which is a discipline that doesn't really exist, but is kind of about like taking text and technology and what those things can mean together, or how you can create art using those two elements. I wanted to take the language of misogyny and flip it and recontextualize it and put it into the context of being about survival. And so I took all of these, it was mostly like porno grind. I took a bunch of like porno grind bands, and I just took all of their lyrics and I put them into a predictive text model called a Markov chain, and it and then just generated 10,000 pages of language, and it creates this like.
Is it like an algorithm?
It's an algorithm that just will predict words based on kind of the words that come previously. So it creates this weird, like nonsensical narrative. It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't say anything, and it's all ultimately just garbage language. But it's all like just horrifying. It's just like, ugh. It's just really disgusting and awful to read. And then it was 10,000 pages because I wanted it to have the weight of a human body, and it was 10,000 pages is 100 pounds, which is, or was at the time, my body weight. And so I installed these pages in a gallery setting with video, and then I had the other part of the thesis was a cycle of songs that was based on The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, which is again about kind of taking like these elements of
Riot in the theater.
Yeah. Taking like the concepts of violence against women in like very, very high art. Stravinsky's Rite of Spring being about, you know, essentially a girl who is chosen to dance herself to death for the sake of her community, and Porno Grind being about like total defacement, and kind of combining these things into a cycle of songs. And those songs are actually showed up on my first EP, Let the Evil of His Own Lips Cover Him, which I released myself. So like all the artwork related to that is all from the thesis, which I hope to reissue and like release in an actual way at some point.
It seems kind of interesting to me because it almost feels like that would be something that, you know, a career artist like Bjork or like, you know, maybe, you know, just, you know, sound designers, other folks like that, David Byrne, you know what I mean? Like these folks who always play with the visual and stuff like that. And you kind of did that before you did almost anything else, which is interesting, like in terms of like the music world. So you almost are arriving at it in a different way, which to me is fascinating. You know, I'm like, all right, we're not 100,000 pages or 10,000 pages before we even play like St. Vitus, you know? So I think that's
right.
kind of fun. And so then that material kind of started to influence like the earliest of Lingua Ignota. Can you explain to folks out there who might not know, how did Lingua Ignota came to be, and why did you decide to take those songs and stuff and give that voice, and then become like, you know, more of a just an artist that plays shows and not is in the more avant-garde or gallery kind of setting, academic world?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think in a lot of places, academia and the DIY scene are extremely separate and have a very contentious relationship. I think it's sort of the same way in Providence, but it's also very much not. Like those places have a really strong relationship. And I think, for instance, like my friend Eli Milholland, who performs in Human Beast, and as B Manuscript, was somebody who was also in my program a year before me and was kind of exclusively in the scene. And our professor saw him perform and said, I want you in our program. And so, you know, he also went to Brown. But I think that there's a good amount of energy there, where people who are involved with RISD or Brown also play shows. And the way that I actually got into that is because I was working with a friend of mine who is in the PhD program in music. His name is Alexander Dupuis. Wonderful, wonderful person. And he does really incredible visuals that are like algorithmically generated and respond to sound. And so we had an AV project together, audiovisual project, where I sang and did the sound aspect, and he did visuals. And we did a couple residencies with that, but then also started playing at like AS220 or Machines with Magnets. And that's kind of how I got into playing shows around Providence. And then I started doing it myself, and was really just kind of like, started with those songs and doing what I thought were almost like mass-like performances where I would just sing like some of these songs that I'd made for the academic work, and also like religious dirges, and bum everyone out for a while. And then I just, it started to become more than I thought it could be. And I decided to release music, and that I wanted to actually pursue it.
That's really interesting. I feel like you know, I feel like there's so many different ways where, like, I was talking to Boy Harsher on here before, and you know, Jay had, like, they make films, and they were, you know, Jay was, you know, doing like spoken word stuff. They started in a gallery. They didn't want to have a full band because they couldn't be too loud. Like, all these different sort of things are really interesting that kind of like lead to these little moments of creation. What was it like to kind of just kind of play your first shows and stuff like that and find your identity? Because I feel like right now, you know, Lingua Ignota is really known for a very explosive performance style.
Yeah.
As well, you know, and really in an audiovisual way too, from lighting to everything. There's a lot of drama.
Yeah.
And so, and that, which is great, right? I love it. But I can't imagine it was always just that way, right? So how did you start to kind of find yourself from that performance aspect?
Yeah, it was kind of like an interesting progression. I'd always found, like, I had operatic performance training. So I had the training in like the, you know, fainting, like, you know, super theatrical, dramatic aspect. And then I think, you know, going to shows when I was young and being exposed to like the DIY community in Providence and like the noise scene and stuff there, and that there was, because I'd studied performance art as well in school, and like the Fluxus movement and like that sort of thing and happenings and whatnot. Yeah. I took some of that, and also there's something about like the DIY scene that is that has like a rawness and an immediacy to it, that doesn't need that stuff, that doesn't need theory to back it up, that doesn't need like ideas behind it. It just is. And I worked for a while, like, to figure out how to best harness that and how to best like engage the audience, because I felt like the music did a particular thing, and I needed the performance to also do a very particular thing in order to like effectively convey the ideas in the music and in the lyrics and stuff. So I think there were a few performances, at least, like for a while, it was probably like very awkward for me and for everyone as I'm trying to figure out how to like navigate what works and what doesn't. I remember there was this one show where at, I think it was AS 220 in Providence, where I was trying to like I was trying to like beat a piece of metal with a pipe or something, and it just didn't work. And it was supposed to be like this big dramatic moment. I was supposed to go like, and it just was not amplified at all and was like horrendous. And so there was stuff like that, but eventually it moved into like, I got really interested in, well, what is this space, and why does this space have to be like this? And who's here with me? Why are they here with me? And how can we all be together in a way that's different? And so I started kind of reorganizing the space. A lot of venues hate this, by the way. You guys have always been great about it. But I tend to like not play on the stage. I tend to move around and create kind of like different scenes in different places of the room, or different parts of the room. So Yeah, no, it's like
the Phantom of the Opera. All of a sudden, she's in the balcony.
Yeah.
Like it's great. And I also just wanted to mention, based on what you were saying before, I think I always love getting into this stuff with artists as well, because we live in such an instant culture, and I'm like, people have to become things.
Yeah.
And the process, and there's these things. So I love hearing these stories. So continue on. And so now to me, that's one of the things that really, it's funny, it defines you as a performer, is that you're not bound to these things. You're constantly kind of tweaking where that is. And there's a lot of drama with the lights as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The light was something that arose out of kind of like different needs. And it was, I had a professor in school who was a director of like avant-garde plays. And I was in one of his plays once, playing him in the play, weirdly. And during the performance, he was directing, but he was also lighting everybody while the performance was happening in like this live way that was really interesting, where he was constantly creating different like facets of action around everyone all the time. And it wasn't just like a static room. So for me, the light was about being in control, because I also am like a fucking freak about that shit. And I have to be in control of like, I have to hang the plastic. Nobody can help me do it. I have to have all the lights. Nobody can help me do that either, even though it would be much easier at this point. And having kind of autonomy and control over how the performance goes. And if something goes wrong, it's my fault. And if it goes well, it's my fault as well. And then also about just, again, like changing the space, because typically it's just like the performer is lit, the performer is on the stage, and like it's all here, me. And that can be very dramatic and very beautiful as well. But then it's like, what happens when you light the audience, and what happens when the way that you light the audience changes, and who's there with you. I think some of the most amazing photographs of my performances are of other people. And like, I get to see how, in those photographs, like how people are affected or like uncomfortable, or, I mean, I think that's really rewarding for me to be able to be like, oh, this isn't just about me, it's about us.
Yeah, and you redefine what going to a show is. And honestly, you know, we've worked together. We've done shows at St. Vitus, we've done shows at Public Records and stuff like that. And honestly, that's a lot of the feedback. That's a lot of, like, I think a lot of people love you as a performer, and how that kind of comes across, and the interactiveness of it, without it being like a hardcore show. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or something that is sort of steeped in a different traditionalism, even though you're influenced by that. So I always think that that's pretty amazing. One of the other things that I was really curious about as well, and it's something that I've seen firsthand, because like we've worked together before, and it's like the shows are tough. Like, they're physically demanding. Like, my homegirl's here with the lights swinging around her neck all over the place while she's singing these notes that are like here, and then the screams are here. And, you know, when you listen to the record, I mean, the harmony is everything that you're doing. It's like, there's a lot going on. When you started to have to tour a bit more and figure that out, what was it like learning how to run a marathon instead of a sprint or two? You know? It's the thing.
I'm not good at it. I'm not, it's one of the things that I'm worst at. I'm not good at touring. I don't have a lot of my friends have been touring for decades and are like, so, I'm so envious of their ability to just like do it and be like fine. With me, I have also like a lot of anxiety. I just suck at being alive and traveling. I suck at it. But
I don't love it either.
But it's like, I when I started touring, I think one of the things I noticed was that I was getting immediately like quite injured all the time, and that I was that my performances are like have some degree of self-harm in them, and that I was just like in pain all the time, and that was just like part of it. And I would, for like larger tours, I would always end it on like a nervous breakdown and just be like completely a miserable person to be around, because I'm just like, it's hard to do every night. It's difficult to put yourself emotionally in that position, especially in the earlier days when people didn't really know who I was. I felt very much like I had to convince people and work very hard to like earn their respect. And sometimes it was like how hard I went on myself that I felt allowed me to earn respect. And that was kind of like my way of paying dues, because I hadn't been able to, tour for decades. I wasn't like a road dog.
Sure.
So,
and you're just learning on the job. I mean, it was interesting when we did a show together. I had injured myself, and I was not in good shape. I could hardly walk, and I was just like doing my thing. I had an injury from training and stuff like that. But I'm like, oh my goodness, you look in worse shape than I do right now. But at the same time, I always find it so amazing what people pull out of themselves. You're like sipping tea or chilling over here. And then as soon as it was time, though, it was like, we are in full bloom mode. A band that caused a lot of chaos that I went on tour with was Dillinger Escape Plan. And I'm like, there's no way tonight's going to be, it's like, and it was like crazier, Wales was crazier. And I was like, how the fuck did these guys do it? So it's something to observe and kind of watch, and it's a learned thing, right? And how you can balance those things. And again, all of this is a progression, as you're growing as an artist, and we all are, like, we're learning how to do different things. And I think that's really important for everyone to always understand and have that like humanity to the approach of what we're doing. One of the things that you mentioned just now that I always think too is like, these songs, the content of the songs, they're brutal. They're just the lyrics, to put yourself in that headspace over and over again.
Right.
I'm like, it has to be a lot to relive and share that over and over again. I mean, I feel like the sharing, though, in the vulnerability in it is what kind of brings everyone to the yard, though, in a way, because we're all like looking at this and we're like, holy shit. And it captures the imagination, but it captures the emotion too. Like you said, like there's this palette that's sort of a newer palette for, I feel like, expressing this stuff. And so what's it like to kind of just go there all the time? And do you think that the work will eventually kind of transcend the self a little bit, because it's like you're constantly always looking in. So I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, I think it's no, not at all. It's really, it has been hard. I think for a while I was not able to acknowledge how hard it was, or how hard it was on me, and that like that it was cathartic for other people. It was not necessarily cathartic for me. For me, it was very much like a reenactment, and that's maybe not the best thing to do. But I do think that for when I perform, I'm able to, I have to move into this weird space where I'm technically able to be able to do the stuff, but also able to, to transcend a little bit my own, to transcend those technical facilities and be able to like dissociate enough to actually access the difficult places and be able to bring everyone in that way. Like, I think if I were feeling the way that I felt about my experiences while I was singing about them, I wouldn't be able to do it at all. And I have to just go kind of somewhere else, somewhere beyond, to be able to do it live.
Sure. And I feel like, obviously, it's almost like this, I feel personally like heavy music, extreme music in general is like this sort of, it's like dancing around the campfire, like catharsis,
Yeah.
And I feel like you just built a different fire. And for certain people, they're like way excited about it. And it's interesting to see how the audiences respond from the depth of the performance not being kind of your traditional on stage kind of thing to like the content, and they're coming there for that particular thing. And who knows?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure people have reached out to you based upon the content and things of your music, which actually kind of is bringing me to, you're about to release like a zine, right, with like all this beautiful artwork and stuff like that through Evil Greed, right? So
yeah,
people are really liking that. Can you talk about that collaboration? Because I just saw that today. I was like, oh shit, okay, we got something to talk about. Unbelievable.
I worked with this a designer from Croatia whose name is Sven, and he came to the Berlin show and took these really really incredible portraits while I was there, and I knew that he had worked with other people. He's worked with like the Soft Moon. He's done photos of Chelsea Wolfe, and I really like his work. And I also knew that he designed clothes and that he had a line. And so I asked him if he wanted to do something together, and he actually came up with the idea of a zine. And then he went and designed a few different shirts for us as well. So his work is really beautiful. And all of the zines, I think they're now sold out, he made them all individually, and they're all hand painted. They're all, individually burned, and they're really extraordinary. I can't wait to see them in person and get mine. So I really love to collaborate with people, and when it's not like, I think I have a hard time acquiescing control of a lot of things that are related to specific parts of the practice and the music, but I really like also the energy that like different people bring to certain things. So that it was really nice to work with him, and he's like a really wonderful person. So
yeah, I thought it was really beautiful, and I was just like, oh wow, this is happening now. So if you can get your hands on one, or some of the merch, if that's still available, there's some really cool stuff. And like as far as visually too, Lingua Ignota visually over time, who have you are you constantly kind of looking at different people to kind of work with? It seems like, there's a lot of religious sort of iconography with yourself in certain modes and stuff like that. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, the more kind of printed kind of visual language that you're trying to kind of get across?
Right. Yeah, I think that the visual aspect to what I do is super important. And that's, again, like a reason why it is kind of hard for me to let go of control sometimes, because like for the first EP and everything, I did all the artwork myself, like all of the, I don't think the artwork is that very good, but all the artwork, like all the text was mine, everything I did myself. And then for All Bitches Die, it was the same. And it's, and it was the same for Caligula. And there was a lot of talk about like, well, who do we want to make the artwork around the record, and like, who do we want to take the picture of the cover? And I'm like, me, I'm going to do it. And so I wanted to create kind of different visual narratives, like different color palettes that are kind of strictly associated with certain works. Like for Caligula, it's like gold and pink, and I did all these still lifes that were just like, I set them up in my room for like 4 months, and had my room was just insane and stupid for a really long time, full of trash, and just like kept taking pictures of them, and so I just had this kind of like endless supply of visual material to surround the record. So yeah, I think that for me, a lot of those things, like, it is a progression, and it's about kind of taking where the practice started and moving it forward. And yeah, using elements like from the very beginning in stuff that's happening now. Like there's like the lights have started in the beginning, but they become like much more kind of not exactly advanced, because they're still like $8 lights from Home Depot, but like more.
But it also shows you that you need the concept, and then that will. You can find different ways to kind of pull that off and do different things. So yeah, doing a lot of that work on your own, and now collaborating a little bit more. And speaking of collaborations and acquiescing, a bit of control, I guess. Yeah. Sightless Pit, that came out not too long ago. Yeah. Collaboration with members of the Body and Full of Hell. Can we talk a little bit about how that kind of came about? Seems like you guys run in the same circles a bit.
Yeah. It was just totally incidental that I happened to be a part of that record. What was I recording there at the time? I was at Machines with Magnets. I think I had my own session before this, or I'd done something for this.
Oh, Hollywood. This is like Hollywood stuff. I was at the studio, and fucking Lindsey Bucking walks in. No problem.
Yeah, I think I was at Machines with Magnets for whatever reason, and Lee and Dylan had a project together, Lee from the Body and Dylan from Full of Hell, and they were working on something together, and I was just kind of hanging out, as I liked to do when the Body was around, just liked having fun with my buds, and they were working on it with Seth Manchester, who's the engineer and producer of Machines, who is the best. And the project was mostly at that point like drums and beat based. And Seth was like, "Hey, Kristen, like come throw some synth lines over this thing." And so I was like, okay. So I just like popped up and, played around on the synth. And then all of a sudden I was, doing that on all the songs, and then like part of the writing process, and then part of like production also, and then doing vocals. So I just became immersed, and we all got along really well, and we're good friends at the time, and so it was a lot of fun to put it together, and it was just kind of like each of us, like Dylan and Lee and I, and Seth as well, and like our weird collective interests amalgamized into this like incredibly strange record that I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's great. It is, but I kind of love that too, because it kind of, obviously the Body and Full of Hell are known for their collaborations and things like that. So it was cool to see. I like seeing like a solo artist in like the context of a group.
Yeah.
And seeing what that just kind of like starts, bringing forth and doing, that kind of thing. So we got about like 15 minutes or so left. And one of the things that I wanted to touch upon before I am going to get to some of the questions in the inbox, and we're going to, get to some of that stuff. But both you and I have been really fortunate to receive a lot of support during this, pandemic time.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to, ask you to sort of speak on that. And obviously there was some surgery that needs to happen and things like that, and you couldn't go on tour. Could you talk a little bit about that situation, how you felt when, basically the public at large, your fans, helped pull you out of it?
They absolutely did. I'm so grateful for that. It's incredible. So I've been struggling with really bad back pain in January, or it just like kind of occurred in January. And then I went into April and it was still bad. And I went to a doctor who said I probably had a herniated disc, but that I didn't need to do imaging for it or an MRI or anything, and that it would probably get better soon. And then I went and still didn't get better. And I went to a surgeon at home in San Diego where my family lives, who did imaging and was like, you have a really big herniation in your lumbar spine and you should probably get surgery. It's not an emergency, but you should get it soon. It's really big. And so then I scheduled surgery, and I didn't know what to do because I was completely broke. And Kathy of Sgt House was like, you should do a GoFundMe or something. I was like, no, I won't do that. I will just get the surgery and not pay and go to collections. And she was like, no, you should really like ask, people will want to help you. And so she asked on my behalf, and I got the help immediately. It was the most like moving experience for me. And so then I knew that I would be able to get this fixed. And I scheduled the surgery, and then everything got canceled. So I've been dealing with, for the last couple weeks now, I've seen a couple different surgeons here in Philadelphia, trying to get, because my symptoms changed and got a little worse. And now I have degenerative disc disease, and I have a couple herniations. And so I've had people tell me, don't get surgery. I've had people tell me, get surgery right now. So I'm probably getting it next week is what's happening. But once that happens, I will hopefully be able to start recovering and getting back to normal. So I want to thank everybody who gave anything to me. And even if you didn't give anything like a kind word or support or anything, it's really meant the world. And I don't know how I can ever pay back.
And I think that's important to really highlight too, man. Like, you just saying a thing or whatever, like, we're human beings. We can feed off of like just a nice, positive moment, especially, in a world full of negativity.
Yeah.
Those things really mean a lot. So thanks for just like addressing that. And I thought it was awesome. I thought that the way that happened and stuff, and your income got kind of pulled out from under you, and like this is something that needs to happen for your health, and also for the continuation of you creating this beautiful art that we all get to participate in and hang out and do all that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna go to the question box and like see what we got in there from the fans. This is from Posthumous Dylan. Where should I start if I'm trying to get into performance art? What are maybe a nice top 3 of like things that kind of really made you go, that's kind of interesting? And maybe in the MFA world, in the more academic world,
This is a good question.
It's a good question. I mean, already batting 1,000. We've had really crap ones.
I would say to start with Fluxus, which was a movement in the 60s and largely American, which is a lot of it is based around the idea of happenings or like discrete moments that occur that have like some kind of minimalistic or absurd thing that a person does. Like some great performance artists are Bruce Nauman, Anna Mendieta, Vito Acconci, who kind of all like relate to that era a little bit.
They were pretty early in on video too, in doing a lot of video stuff too. Fluxus stuff is amazing. I can't agree with you more. I love that stuff. So that's a great question. Thank you very much, guys, for putting that one in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I just got some. Oh, whoa, we're moving here. Oh, this is a good one. What has been the biggest thing you have learned since joining Sgt House? And that's from James Merchant.
Oh man, Sgt House. Kathy really changed the trajectory for me and changed how I thought about myself. And I think just learning from Kathy has been incredible. Kathy is just such a badass, and because of my music, people might think that I'm like a hard ass and like I am an aggressive person, but I'm very, very shy and very like quiet and small mostly, and like a big people pleaser. And I don't say no to anything really. And Kathy has taught me to be like, or I'm learning, I'm still not there, but it's taught me to be like, you deserve to have a voice and to speak your mind and to say no to people if you want to. And I think, you know, Kathy has gotten so successful because she's not willing to take people's shit. And I think that's incredible. It's been really cool to be part of that family where everyone is really, really talented and really kind and really brilliant and kind of takes care of each other. And yeah, I'm super, super lucky to be there.
And fair play. Sgt House obviously puts out a lot of great stuff, and we've done a lot of work with them. So
yeah,
absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting too. You know, when you're becoming an artist or whatever, and things are starting to happen for yourself too. The artistry is, in and of itself, is one part of the much larger picture, right? And so to kind of get advice and help and or, you know, in this case, a manager or other things of that nature is definitely key as far as growing things and making things happen, right?
Right, exactly.
So let's take a look what else. Oh, this is a good one. Here we go. Any films or works you recommend that may have inspired the upcoming album? From Dislodge. Maybe we just talk about some films that you've seen lately that you like. Anything?
What was that? Sorry?
I said, or maybe you could just talk about a couple of things that you've seen lately that you like as far as film is concerned.
Oh, man. I'm trying to think of something that the upcoming album is going to be very different, I think, than the previous thing that came before. I don't know if I'm still looking for kind of the thread through it, but I think a film that we watched recently that I love, we watched it like maybe a month or so ago, was Tarkovsky's Nostalgia, which is my favorite Tarkovsky film. And it has just, like if for those who haven't seen Tarkovsky, it's like very, very slow paced, but extremely rich, beautiful scenery that's very kind of contemplative and full of, like, very loaded with meaning. And Nostalgia has just like the most incredible scenes in it. And yeah, that's one. We watched recently My Best Fiend, the film about Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski and their relationship.
Was that cool? I heard it was good.
Oh yeah, it's insane. It's really amazing. I know Klaus Kinski is like a kind of a terrible human being, and it's really interesting to see this how their energies played off of each other and how they were both kind of like insane megalomaniacs and really butted heads, but also made each other's work better. And to hear like Werner Herzog talk about anything in his like weird, stern manner is wonderful. But yeah, it's a really cool film about like dynamics between different creators, I think. So that was a good one we saw recently.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
I like. I feel like during these quarantine times, we're seeing so many different things, and we're kind of, sometimes you need to see stuff like that to kind of, reload a little bit. And like you said, you're trying to find the new thread,
Yeah.
Like I talked to Mike from Yob, and he's like, yeah, I sit with my guitar and like I take things in, and I just kind of try and find the next moment that kind of that opens the floodgates to the new, just the next kind of movement for the art, which I think is a very interesting thing. This is I like one of these quickies. Which Providence eatery is better, Julian's or the Grange?
Oh man,
that really, it's very regional, but I need to know too, because
this is going to be a very divisive answer. I'm going to go with the Julian's.
Oh wow.
But yeah, they have great burgers. Yeah.
Lingua Ignota endorses Julian. Let him know when they can reopen and have a couple people in there. You should go. That'd be great. So that's it. The insiders love that.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple minutes left, and we end kind of generally doing a question which is kind of simple and hard. You have 5 records for the quarantine. These are the desert islands. What are we taking with us?
Oh, man.
Just up top of the dome. We're not judging very harshly here. We've talked about Tarkovsky and MFAs. Like, we're fine,
I hope I can even remember the names of 5 records at this point.
Or you can even do what you've been listening to recently, What's been just on the record player or whatever.
I've been listening to this artist, Saint Abdullah, who's an artist on Purple Tape Productions, Val Bertelsen, a really incredible artist that does a lot of like kind of musique concrète beat-based, like kind of industrial, kind of free jazz. It's like really interesting experimental work. I've been really liking that. Lex was making us listen to Korn earlier today. We were listening to...
Which record?
We were listening
Talk about it. Life isn't peachy, but maybe it is.
Yeah, we were enjoying they do a cover of that song from Nightmare Before Christmas about Santa Claus, and it's just like stupendously bad. We're doing a lot of that, like a lot of like kind of escapism into like total trash is what's going on over here. Is like we watch The Bachelor, we watch Ghost Adventures, we listen to Stitches and Korn.
Yeah, we used to do a thing when Primitive Weapons would tour now and again, where we would just do crappy hour, and we put on like the worst possible. We try and find like the worst shit, like the most extremely worst stuff to like what we would listen to. And I'm going to stay a bit political, and I won't go into everything that we were listening to, but it was this really one-upsmanship from like really like red state pop country to like, really like D-level new metal. To like all sorts of things. I mean, like Korn is pretty fucking sweet depending on the but so I think that we maybe we could all have a little chat about how bad we want to go. And I think that those things are definitely great. So we're about to wrap up. Kristen, I just want to thank you for coming on and lending us your voice for a hot second. And we can't wait to have you back at St. Vitus, and just for you to go back to performing and also recovering from your upcoming surgery and everything. So thanks a lot for coming on, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, one of these days.
Yeah, one of these days.
Definitely. One of these days, it'll happen. This will pass. So have a wonderful evening. Take care. And guys, stay tuned. We'll have another episode on Monday with Alex Ayer from Lotion and Death Traders. Please.
Cool. Thanks, guys.